Alrighty, so hello. Um, I want to make a quick little video. Since Jahoda and Nefer are getting a rerun, I want to talk about using Jahoda with Nefer because I see a lot of people online in like guide videos and stuff like that saying that Jahoda can't be used with Nefer because of how her skill works. So the prevailing idea is that Llama's skill applies too much Dendro, and the enemy will end up having a Dendro aura, which will prevent Jahoda from absorbing with her skills. So let's look at what they're talking about here. So if we Llama's skill, we have Dendro on the enemy, and if we use Columbina, skill and burst, Dendro's still on the enemy. So when we try to do our stuff with Jahoda, it doesn't even work. And the reason why this is bad is because Jahoda's C6, which is a pretty massive crit value buff, which is a big part of her power, cannot be activated unless her skill is functional. And as we can see right there, her skill wasn't functional, right? But something we gotta consider is that's not how rotations work out in Nefer teams. If we go... I don't have Nefer, so I can't do, like, a one-to-one thing. We're just gonna be thugging it out with Al-Haytham, I guess. But let's change this to Stygian, right? And let's simulate a Stygian rotation. What we're going to do is we're going to start with Columbina's skill. Llama's skill isn't even going to be active, right? And then now Jahoda gets her skill, and we do Llama's thing. And we can, like, go on Al-Haytham, do some stuff, whatever, right? And now we go back to...
Leave this place.
Okay, Jahoda got her thing filled up. Now, why did she get her thing filled up? Is the question, right? And, like, this isn't even, like, favorable to Yoda. Let's stop the sound effects. Jesus. Okay. So, in that full rotation, you notice that Jahoda was able to get her treasure flask filled up through Llama's skill when we restarted the rotation. And the reason she was able to do that is because both Jahoda's burst and her skill also apply Hydro while Jahoda's trying to fill up her flask for the second rotation. So if we, like, do this, but let's ignore Al-Haytham for a second. Because Al-Haytham applies a lot of Dendro. He applies more than Nefer, so it's not even really fair to Jahoda.
You poor lost lamb.
So let's just do this, like, off cooldown on Bina, alright?
I never leave empty-handed.
Jahoda gets her thing just fine through Llama's skill.
Receive
And we can do Llama's whole thing, right?
Surge. Finders keepers.
It's certainly not, like, great. It helps more when Bina has her burst up. So we can do burst, and then Yoda can use her own burst to help out. And she gets her thing filled up. Because that's the thing, a lot of these Hydra hits are... Like, well, let's look at, like, how often Jahoda's actually, like, hitting with her shit. Okay, Jahoda, that's enough. Let's see how often Jahoda's actually hitting with her shit. So, from what I understand, Jahoda's skill doesn't have any internal cooldown, so it'll just apply a Hydra every 2 seconds when it hits, but her burst does, and it's every 4 hits, so it's every 2 volleys in this team. Oh, shit.
Surge. You're not going anywhere.
She's like hitting with Hydra like kind of a lot, actually.
I never leave empty-handed. Smash and grab.
We have a Hydra aura on the enemy, enough of one that Jahoda can absorb it. Now, Jahoda's field time is a lot. Like, if we're being so for real, Jahoda has really long field times. So, in a lot of teams, this kind of thing is a problem where, like, oh, sometimes she's filling it up, but then sometimes she can't for a second. It can be a problem in a lot of teams, but Nefer has really short field times, so Jahoda's long field times are kind of alleviated by that. So, yeah. Jahoda's pretty good for Nefer, actually. If we just, like, exit out... Oh, my gosh. Let's, like, try some narration that's a little bit more scripted. Fuck. Alright, looking at my calculation sheet here, and try not to, like, read into this too much, what we're looking at. Okay, this is a mess that only I can understand. Okay, let's keep our hats on here. This is the standard Nefer team of, like, Nefer on Sky, Llama on Deepwood, Bina on Silken Moon Serenade. I have Bina have in two different columns here because it was easier to do, like, the res shred and shit. Bina had a bunch of custom shit, like, to get her to work on my sheet, but, like, it's fine, right? And then Sucrose on instructors, where we're using Sucrose right after Bina and before Nefer so that Bina gets the extra 50 EM from Sucrose's shit, and Nefer can get the instructors and all that stuff for her whole uptime. Because what Sucrose does in this team is she gives a fuck ton of EM, right? And Llama's Quills scales with the EM that Sucrose is giving. I have it manually added right here. And Nefer's motion value is EM scaling and all that shit, right? So this is a pretty good team. Well, 160k DPS is what I'm getting for this, right? But there's a couple things about this team that, like, people like to tout as, like, good things that can, like, push it even further. And that is Sucrose has really low field times, right? And Nefer being able to do her shit all in one go, Nefer also has really low field times. Like, she is doing it in the duration of instructors, right? She's doing all her stuff in that duration. There's a lot of extra time just, like, sitting here in this rotation, which means that, and because of how Nefer's skill has two charges that will go off cooldown, or will start ticking down their cooldown after using the first one, but before using the second or whatever. What it all means is that you can do faster than 18-second rotations, even though, strictly speaking, Nefer's cooldowns gates her to 18-second rotations. And if we do 17-second rotations, we get up to 170k, which is kind of pog, right? But this isn't, like, sustainable. What's going to happen is eventually you're going to run in, after, like, 6 rotations ish, you're going to run into cooldown issues on Nefer, where you end up having to, like, wait 3 seconds for her next skill to come off cooldown. So even though you're saving a second per rotation for, like, the first few rotations, you're eating that time later on, right? And if that happened at, like, and if that point in time where you run into cooldown issues on Nefer happened after Stygian's timer was up, I would be more into, like, yeah, let's calc Nefer at 17 seconds. Like, this is kind of pog, where you don't run into issues until after Stygian is over. But the fact is that you do run into the issue before Stygian's timer is up. So it really scuffs, like, your last rotation, and especially if you're, like, close to beating the thing, and, like, oh, you're, like, so close to beating it, but then you gotta, like, wait there. It kind of scuffs you up. So I feel like 18 seconds is just, like, more honest, you know? But, I mean, you can do however you want, right? So this is, like, standard Nefer calc shit, okay? Now, if we go to the Jahoda thing, let's black this out. According to my calcs, Jahoda's better at C6 with a little asterisk. Now, there's a couple things about Jahoda is that she does have longer field times, so you are getting this 18-second rotations. You do not have the option of doing shorter rotations. You don't. You are doing 18-second rotations, so you're locked to this shit. And the rotation's a little bit weird. We do Bina EQ, Jahoda QE, and then you do Llama's burst. You don't do her skill. Right? And this is continuous rotations, right? If we go back to that first rotation, Stygian, you're using Llama's skill here and only her skill. Because, like, the first rotation Stygian's a little bit weird. You're just, like, going through without bursts, and you're doing your best here with the energy you got. But so this is continuous rotations or rotations in Abyss, where you have your burst up, right? So we're doing Bina EQ with her burst, Jahoda QE with her burst, right? Llama burst only. And then we do Nefer C3, right? We do one Nefer skill excuse me. We do one Nefer skill combo here, and then we do Llama's hold E, and then we go back to Nefer. The reason that we're switching to Llama twice is because of how Jahoda's EM buff works. Jahoda gives 100 EM to the active character when she heals the active character, but that buff only lasts for 6 seconds. And what you want is you want that 100 EM buff to apply to all of Nefer shit and Llama shit. So you're switching to Llama twice to reapply Jahoda's EM buff so that it applies to Llama's burst quills and all of Nefer shit. If that makes sense, right? So this is like, this will take up the entirety of the 18 seconds, right? Even assuming you're doing quick dash cancels on Nefer. And it's a little bit more complicated because you're using Llama shit twice, right? But there are a couple benefits to this. Instead of running, we aren't running instructors on anyone here because people, you'll struggle to get instructors uptime, right? What we're doing is Jahoda on Deepwood. Bina is still on SMS. We're putting Llama on Abaid. So the thing about Abaid, it's that new set that's with the Hexerai set, is that the 2-piece gives EM, which is an extra 80M for all of Llama's shit, right? Which is pretty valuable to Llama, right? 80M's 80M. That's Pog, right? And then you're also getting an extra 60% Lunar Bloom damage that applies to Llama's hold skill because the buff persists for 3 seconds after Llama takes the field, right? So this or her hold skill can get that huge bump from Abaid. And then, like, assuming you're actually building your Llama with crit, which you kind of should, you end up, like, with a pretty big nuke, you know? Because Jahoda at C6 is giving a fuck ton of crit value. Like, I'm not sure if you can notice the difference between this and the Sucro shit, but there's a lot more crit value to go around here, you know? And there's some more energy to go around here, too, because Jahoda's on Favge, right? And you could do, like, 2 skills on Sucrose, I guess, because she has sack frags or whatever, but, like, then you're like complicating it and you aren't getting swirls, so you aren't like triggering instructors anyway. It's kind of fake as fuck. But yeah, you can take advantage of Yehoda's crit value bust for the whole team. Now, if you notice, Nefer's personal damage is worse on this team compared to the Sucrose team. It's about 200 DPR worse. So what that is going to mean is that this team will perform worse if you have like a lot of vertical investment on Nefer, like her Sig and shit. But I mean, Yehoda's a healer and Sucrose isn't, you know? So Yehoda's just kind of nice, and she is on paper at least 4K DPS better, you know, if you wanna go for it. So there's all that is to say, there's no reason to not use Yahoda if you want to. I mean, I guess if you don't get her C6, like, she becomes a lot worse. Like, if we just take away the crit value from Nefer alone, like, ooh, that's minus 14k DPS. That's kind of bad. Um, but if you get C6 Yahoda, just use her, you know. If you like her, use her, get her on Deepwood, you know, get Lamana Bade with some crit value and stuff. So yeah. If you like Jahoda, you can use her. That's the prevailing message here.